Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. I've put the old sweatshirt on for this one here today. We call this weekly segment the Recon, and it was my idea to say Don and I should just have it with Dan Roderick because I stole this from him. I want to make sure when I'm borrowing things that I'm giving a gripe session, but I didn't want it to be gripey as much as I wanted it to be breezy and checking in on the temperature of Baltimore. So we're about to go back out to State Fair, maybe start doing some outdoor things in May, hopefully getting back indoor over at Fadley's at some point this summer as well as the Crab Cake Tour. And I put a little thing up on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter that I think Don and I are going to get to here in the Recon about Maryland and touring Maryland. And Don, I'm getting my first shot in a few hours. You're not my last human contact, but very close to before I get my shot. You were emotional about getting your shot, right?
It felt great. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't teary or anything, but I'm
It was a celebratory thing with
as
you.
folks know, I can tend to be teary. As my daughter says, we're just a bunch of mower men or weepy men. But yeah, it felt great, and it continues to feel good. I hope that folks will continue to get vaccinated. I saw an amazing statistic yesterday, and I'm not diminishing blood clots or anything in J&J, and I love the fact that we're really careful in
My
the
wife
United
got the
States.
J&J, by the way.
Yeah, and here was the stat, Nestor, that I saw. And again, I applaud the pause, and hopefully they'll get back out there and get J&J out there again. That the incident of blood clots so far with J&J is less than 1 in a million. Birth control pills have a side effect that's listed that blood clots in 1 in 1,000. So I turned to my wife and I said, "Did you know that birth control pills had a side effect of a possible blood clot in 1 in 1,000?" She says, "Oh, sure." She said, all women know that. And she said, actually, that was my first thought when I saw that the women were between 18 and 48. She said, I wondered if it was related to the birth control medication. So, I'm hoping that they'll take a look at it and decide that it's still safe. We need to get the country vaccinated. I mean, it's really, really clear, is it not, Nestor? And I want to get to your travels here in a minute, but it's really clear to me that we haven't wrestled, as they say, we haven't wrestled this thing yet. The virus is still pretty strong. We've still got nitwits like Jim Jordan carrying on and trying to berate Dr. Fauci. I mean, I just, it's the most, it's like we are in this bizarro world.
I can see, some jackass like Jim Jordan, spelled with a G, going after Fauci, but any sane man in the public square could look and say, that's an idiot.
Yeah.
That's a scholarly person. And therefore, that's just the guy screaming on the radio. It's one of the reasons I stopped this format was I stopped being proud of what it was when I would drive around and just hear batshittery that I was sanctioning. And I think when you send Jim Jordan to DC, when you send these crazy women from Georgia and Colorado, I don't even know what to say.
Well, I'm laughing. Sometimes you have to laugh rather than cry, but every now and then Saturday Night Live, really gets it right and makes you laugh out loud. And this week in their weekend update, they showed the clip of Matt Gaetz going out to a rally and defending himself, and he was so proud that he had gotten a lot of support this past week. And he said, I really want to thank, he said, I've gotten really great support. President Trump reached out, and Jim Jordan reached out, and Marjorie Taylor Greene reached out. And Colin Joe said, stop. That's your list of surrogates that you're gonna hold up. Donald Trump, Jim Jordan, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like you said, he could have added Boebert, he could have added the whole
Scott
cast.
Baio. Scott
Oh, he could
Baio
have
called.
added the whole
The thing I
cast.
saw on Saturday Night Live that got to me that was actually funny was the iceberg thing was very funny.
Oh, that was, I said every
Iceberg
now,
thing was very,
uh,
very funny because you and I argue about PR and
right.
being coached up and who has an agent and who's being handled and what you can say or can't say to whomever and all of that. And that to me was just sort of like boom, right on
You,
point.
Nestor, most of my educator buddies out there will understand this reference. I used to say to folks, I was I was always I would usually come home from a conference, some kind of professional development conference, feeling pretty good. And the reason was that I had a simple rule when I went to anything like that. And you've been to a lot of motivational conferences and you've done Robbins and other things. When I would go to a conference, here was my bar. If I get one thing today that can help me be better, that can
You know
help me
what?
be a
That's
better leader.
exactly what Brian Billick says. I've
Does
heard Brian
really?
Billick say
You
the
tell the coach
exact
that he and
same
I.
thing to me 50 times in my life,
Well, there you
literally.
go. You tell the
Because
coach,
Brian
give
and
me
I
a
would
ring.
do those things together. We would go to New York together, and one time Denny Green was speaking in New York,
Right.
and Brian and Denny very close, and when Denny died, it was yeah. But I've Brian would always say that to me. I can
Oh
hear
no,
it in
that
my
was
ears.
that was my bar, and a lot of my educator friends were the same. Now some were Debbie Downers, and they say, "Oh, this was stupid. I spent 7 or 8 hours," and I'd say, "Well, did you get anything?" And they
You
said,
know
"Well,
what,
that."
man? If you really want to get into that side of my personal development stuff, but like the notion that Zig Ziglar one morning showed up at the now Royal Farms Arena, which is this way, by the way, or that way, up the road, but and it's one of those all day things. And this was sort of in the Robbins era, but I think it was a guy out of Toronto that did them, a guy out of Tampa that did them. But they would come in, they'd have Norman Schwarzkopf, or they would have. I saw Barbara Bush, I saw just all sorts of people, right? But that particular day, his piece about the day before vacation, you can Google it. The day
Yeah.
before vacation, Zig Ziglar. You know that paradigm and axiom and all that stuff.
No, I don't, but I
You get
understand what you're
more
saying.
done. The most productive
Oh,
day of your year is the day before you have to put the kids and the wife in the truck and go to the beach. Like literally on that Thursday or Friday before you have to fly away for 10 days, you have to check the heat, check you check everything. Everything's packed, everything's put away, nothing's on fire. Your checklists are all done. And he said if you could live every day of your life that way, how productive could
so
you be if you woke up, had your list of things to do, and I do. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a list maker, and and then I cross it all out, and I do things in 4-color pen because I'm old school, Moeller.
Nestor, you probably, and I'm going to, for our listeners, I am going to take this back to Saturday Night Live, and then we're going to talk about the travel log with Nestor. But anyone who knows my wife, you just mentioned Liz. You and she should talk about it one day because my kids marvel at her. There is a list for everything on her. There is a Thanksgiving list that people would say, "Boy, getting ready for Thanksgiving."
Well, she's
You
a
guys,
school teacher. You make
right?
you make lesson
It
plans.
starts 2.5 weeks ahead of time. On this day, you do this to get ready for
I've
Thanksgiving.
always had a very
Two,
complicated life and I take on complicated challenges. And in order to do complicated things, you have to not watch movies sometimes. You have to not watch the
right.
NHL sometimes.
The-
You have to make lists because things that are complicated take process and they take strategy. And if you want to go in a straight line instead of zigzagging, you should have a strategy before you begin your journey.
well,
Know
well,
your outcome, Tony Robbins.
there you go. The other day, I walked downstairs. I actually texted the kids because I just shook my head. I said, "Just another example." And Linda was walking around the house with a can of paint and a paintbrush, and she
Tell her to
was
come over here when she's done.
touching touching up the woodwork. And I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I'm touching up the woodwork." And I said, "Oh, okay." She said, "Today is my day. to touch up the woodwork. So once a year on her calendar, it says, Linda, touch up woodwork. So on that day, she grabs the paint, walks around,
Never the day
and
before, never the day
no,
after.
oh no, on
Within that
that
week.
day,
Okay.
touch up the woodwork. So lists are important. But the point, tying all this back to Saturday Night Live, that's why I still watch it, and why I've still, and I think the cast is pretty terrific that they have now. But I always say, if there are one or two things that make me laugh in Saturday Night Live in that 90 minutes, hey, that's good. I don't expect, I think people forget when they go back to the golden days. And I mean, I was there, man. I'm old enough. You were a puppy, but I'm old enough. I remember when Belushi and Aykroyd and Chevy Chase and Bill Murray and Gilda, Jane Curtin. I remember it. Lorraine Newman. I remember that cast. Garrett Morris, the original. They weren't hysterical in every skit. We idealize it and said, "Oh man, they were the best." They were.
There were a lot of swings and misses in the
Oh,
Belushi
sure,
era. Yeah,
sure,
there were.
sure, sure, absolutely. So, hey, listen,
I wish it were
before,
better. I've wished it were better for a long,
yeah,
long, long time. But when it is funny, I do laugh and it comes to
yeah,
me and I feel good about it.
and
That's
very,
all.
very, very talented. I mean, a pretty talented cast. This cast, I think, from top to bottom.
Can I
So,
make a
listen,
recon admission?
yeah, man.
Because I think it's going to lead where you want to go anyway into talking about Maryland and travel. That's what you wanted to talk about,
Well,
kind of,
I'm
sort of.
fascinated by what I'm going to call travels with Nestor,
Well,
because
okay.
I
Go ahead.
think you are about to do what more people would be surprised how much fun they could have. And I'm not talking about just being learning. I mean, you'll learn a lot, but I want you to talk a little bit about your motivation. I think people would be shocked about how great this state is. Nestor, during the pandemic, one of those things we said, we got to do something. We got to get out of here. And Linda went down to the visitor center in Cambridge, not the Harriet Tubman Visitor Center, which is a must for you and anybody else. You got to do that one. But she went to the Visitor Center, and there was a map of the Underground Railroad, the trail that Harriet Tubman took, uh, and I think it was an app that she loaded on her phone that they refer you to, which gives you an audio tour. And we began to explore Harriet Tubman's Underground Railroad. It's spectacular. So those kinds of gems exist all across this
Okay,
state.
so
So
here's what I'm
Nestor
going
and
to do.
Jen are
Well,
about to go on
well,
the Great Maryland
I
tour.
don't know how much of it Jen's going to actually do because I'm trying to make it appealing for her too, right? Or to say, all right, these would be things that she'd be interested in doing, or I'd be interested in doing. Or I know there's a couple things we've talked about doing, like the railroad, that I've seen out in Western Maryland. I'm interested in that. I'm interested in fly fishing. I'm interested in just seeing what Cumberland looks like and what Oakland looks like, and what,
You've
like, I've
got to
never
get
been there.
Rod. Hey, man, do your. I know Roderick's offered. Get him on your calendar now
I'm
and
gonna
get
fly
him.
fish with. I'm gonna listen.
Absolutely.
Here's the deal. Dennis has never been fly fishing. Dennis Colatzos, who fishes all the time. I fished when I was a kid. I crabbed when I was a kid. My kid asked me a couple weeks ago, "You ever been crabbing?" I'm like, "Yeah, I went crab when I was a kid all the time. We had the cages, we had the chicken necks, the whole deal."
Sure.
Jen
Look,
and I
East Side.
saw kids crabbing
You're an
down in
East
North
Side
Carolina last
boy.
year.
You're an East Side
Yeah,
boy,
I
man.
mean, I
200
tried.
miles of waterfront.
The one thing I never did, and I think I told somebody this last week, you were on the call last week. We did the Classic Five. I never hit a golf ball until I was in my 20s. Like, never even knew how. I held it like a baseball bat or a tennis racket. But yeah, I tried everything. I would say this. I mean, how many times? There's never a time I drive to Ocean City where I don't think of my dad in the Torino crossing the old Nanticoke Bridge and the old rickety,
Sure.
stop signs and red lights. I say to my wife, we drive through Salisbury. I'm like, you have no idea. Salisbury is where we like peed,
Right.
chased girls in the Arby's, got beer, got ice in the liquor store. It's
Yeah, Jen only knows the bypass, right? She
yeah, like
goes
there's a
over.
freeway. It's a
Right, right,
freeway,
right.
right? So, I think of all these places, but, Brian lived off a road off the Y River. I've been down one of those roads. It's beautiful. I mean, one night I saw this spectacular firefly show. I left Brian's house. We were driving to Ocean City and we'd sort of stopped and said hello on the way down. And I've just seen fields there, but I haven't ventured far off the western part of 50 when you consider like eastern part. I've driven every one of those roads past every chicken coop toward Dewey Beach, or like the east side, you sort of have gotten off the road a couple times because of traffic or whatever, and thought, well, I'll just fish through. When you had the old Chevy Chase map, now with Google Maps, it's insane, right? So here's the deal. I'm going to do a summer vacation thing that's going to involve Maryland crabs and eating crab cakes, and maybe shooting some video and talking to some of our friends, Baltimore Positive people across the state. I know we already talked last week to Michael Steele about that, and we'll
Well,
talk to more
you're
people.
going to meet Heather Mazier over in Chestertown,
I
right?
hope so. I was going to ask Brandon Scott if he wanted to come over to the other side because he went to school over there. Maybe he's got a place. So there's a lot of things we're going to be able to do, right? But I don't just want to make it about like crab cakes or about me getting a tan at the beach, because that's what I did when I was 19, right? Like, and I want to fly. I want to do stuff I've never done, not stuff that I've already done. So I'm trying to commit to that in some way where I could start east, work my way home, work from home some of the time here and there, maybe feature, an aquarium or, something local here for a couple of days. But I can always come back and do something in Baltimore. I'm figuring like Frederick, Crisfield, Southern Maryland, Waldorf, Point Lookout, Tillman's Island, all of the tributaries that the people fish in. Get up in the morning and go out on a boat and watch people crab with like do things like that. Thinking more, not necessarily Mike Rowe, because I don't need a dirty job, but more Bourdain, more like
Sure.
Guy Fieri, and really finding places where they're pulling crabs out of the water and making a crab cake in a place maybe I don't know about. That's a shack. Because when I Googled this, stuff came up. But Don, I just want to say this, and I'll let you rant all night about Maryland because you've had more experience with this than me. When I put it up, people just gave me restaurant recommendations. I think they just thought I was looking for places to eat. And that's not what I was looking for. I was looking for like experiences,
Well,
like
go
somebody
back
that
and
rode
ask.
that railroad in Western Maryland or has fly fish or like experience things. That's all.
Sure, go back and ask it again, and ask it and say, thanks for because you got a wide network. Thanks for the restaurant recommendations. We'll say to everybody that's listening out there now to the Recon to hop on Nestor's social and tell him where you visited. What's cool. I sent you this morning the Visit Maryland, and I would encourage anybody to go to visitmaryland.org.
Get
It's a
some ideas there, right?
great tourism site. Oh, all around the region. I mean, you'll be able like you did with your ballpark tour using that Visit Maryland site. You'll be able to just really go around and
Well,
and
this
and
appeals
do
to the
some.
social studies field trip guy in you, right? I mean,
Oh
when you
yeah,
were
yeah.
teaching, where did you lead field trips? Let's talk about field trips when
Well,
I was a kid, because
I'll tell
the
you
whole
what's
premise of this
interesting.
show was social
Yeah.
studies and field trips and places we went. Miss Johnson took me to Longwood Gardens. I finally took my wife back. I know your wife loves it. Your wife and I have had a great conversation about that. But we went to Philadelphia to see the Liberty Bell because no one ever went to Philadelphia because they always went to Washington. She wanted to do something different because she was like that.
Yeah, no doubt. Field trips, yes, many field trips. A couple of of. It's funny, we have a list of things that we always tend we're going to talk about. And sometimes we don't get to them because we just, as you said, we just go off on these tangents. A couple of field trips jump out at me. One, at Lansdowne High School, I took a group of social studies students to both of these first two stories are actually Lansdowne stories.
So they're old.
Bev, my good friend Bev Hickman, gone far too soon. One of the greatest social
So
studies
this happened
teachers and
before I
assistant.
knew you.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, well, this is in the 70s. Okay, go
This would
ahead.
have been early. This would have been early '70s, absolutely. And we were doing the Capitol, the typical Capitol tour, and you would get to go. You'd walk around the White House, and you'd see the Supreme Court, and you would get to you would get to go through the Capitol building. And on that, probably somewhere I could dig this out. I think I have it somewhere. But lo and behold, coming down the steps of the Capitol to my 30 or 40 Lansdowne students is Senator Ted Kennedy. and he
Wow.
stopped and talked to the kids. And we certainly didn't have cell phones, so it was Instamatic camera or somewhere. But I mean, that
Lansdowne,
was
is that near the harbor?
an icon, right? You got, oh my, and the kids, even though a ninth or 10th grade student isn't all that into national politics, they knew the Kennedy name, and that was like, wow, Ted Kennedy.
I saw
Then
Ted Kennedy twice in my life. Once at a Caps game, once at a Barbara Streisand concert. True.
there you go. And then I remember probably same group of students. We went to Annapolis, and all of our local delegates and leaders, and it was someone you knew very well, Senator Coulahan and Delegate Malone, and all those guys were
Lion of
good friends.
Halethorpe.
They would give us great tours down there. And one day we met a young and up and coming uh, Senate president down there, a young man by the name of Steny Hoyer, who has gone on and done okay for himself, I would say. But the wildest, Nestor, and it's not a Maryland field trip. When I look back, I think it doesn't compare to my wife probably 10 or 12 times taking 30 or so kids to Paris. I mean, that still blows my mind that you've got 30 kids running all around Paris and you're in charge of them. Actually, there is
Can you do that even now? Like, I mean, would
I'd have
anybody?
to. You couldn't for a while after 9/11. Now, whether they've opened that
Yeah, I
back
mean,
up or not, but I will tell you a
because that happened in
harrowing.
my school. Our French class went to Quebec
Sure.
and to
Oh yeah,
Montreal.
yeah, yeah.
They
No,
got on a bus and they went off, and like I was in Spanish class. Like, when are we going to go to Mexico?
yeah. Linda took kids everywhere, and she and a couple of her good friends, and one time I forget exactly which bombing, but she was over there and had a group of students, and one of the things was that students had an opportunity to go out and explore the city. They did it in small groups on their own. And I always remember Linda would, when she would meet with the parents and they would go through the itinerary, she was very, very upfront with them. She would say, I'm going to be direct with you. There is a part of the tour for the experiential
It's
piece
going to be
where
unsupervised.
unsupervised. And if you she said, if you are uncomfortable with your child's ability, your child's maturity to handle that, this is not the right tour. So she had great kids, obviously, that she was taking over there. And one time, the kids were out and there was a metro bombing, one of the bombings in the metro. And one of the things the kids did, Linda took weeks teaching the kids how to use the metro. She took the school. They went after hours and at night at school. And she was at Lansdowne at the time. And she would make different hallways, different lines. This would be this line of the metro. That would be that line. This would be this stop. Kids would have to buy tickets and then go through the school, stopping at the different stops so they would get used to using the metro. So she knew they could use the metro. So there was a good chance that these kids were on the metro somewhere. And the kids, as they drifted back, and people are reaching out, parents are calling the hotel because the news has hit America. And two of the kids were not back. And I think Linda I don't know how long it was, if it was 35 minutes after they were due back or an hour. I don't remember specifically, but I think it was the longest time in her life, longest hour of her life before they showed up. And I can only imagine what you're thinking at that moment, that I've got young men and women out there unsupervised and we've had a bombing in the metro. So that was harrowing. And then of course, we always, at Sparrows Point, when I was the principal at Sparrows Point, a bunch of us, a bunch of teachers, Jay Tanner, Paul Muller, Chris Battaglia, who we used to always take the kids to New York City for
Oh,
a
wow.
weekend. And
Yeah.
that was a hoot. And Nestor, funny, man, we have
You took
veered
kids
off.
from Sparrows Point to New York City
It was great. It
and
was
took
it was
on
a
the
great experience.
responsibility of that.
The first time, a funny
Did they
story.
read The Catcher in the Rye?
Yeah. Well, we bought them all. A little trick for all you young teachers out there playing, if you're still allowed to take field trips. We bought them all baseball hats. We bought. I can still see them. Red baseball hats. And when we were out together, you had even the girls had to wear the red baseball hat. So we could do a quick check at every stop. We started with 24 kids. All right, boom, 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 boom. Hey, 24, we're good to go. Boom,
On the bus, let's go.
24, we're good to go. We count on the bus. Well, one of the experiences that we gave
I've
them,
run a few Ravens road trips where everybody's in purple and it's hard to figure out who's who.
there you
So,
go.
yes.
We had red hats. Well, we took them. One of the experiences they got was to go see a Broadway show. And we'd pick the appropriate Broadway show, one that was kid enough friendly, and a musical. And we would take them to a Broadway musical. And we thought we had covered everything, even though people don't tend to get dressed up particularly nice anymore for Broadway, which I sort of miss. We would have these kids, we would say to them, we want you to have clothes because we're going to go out to a nice place one night for dinner and we're going to go to a Broadway show. We want you to wear something nice like you would if you were going to church or your cousin's wedding. We want you to wear your church or wedding clothes. And they would get all dressed up and they would look great. We thought we had covered everything about the Broadway show. And the show, and we gave each kid a ticket. And the show's beginning to start. And we realized there's people standing in the aisle, and still I want to crawl under the seat. And the ushers are panicking, and we realized the only theater experience our kids had ever had was the movies. And this was before the assigned seats at like the Cinemark, right? It was the old days at the Golden Ring Mall where you just go in and you sit down in a seat. These kids had a ticket to get in the theater. They just went in and sat down, had no idea that their seat had a number on them. So we were sitting and these poor people had bought tickets. They couldn't get to their seats because all these kids
West Side Story's on.
were in all, the show's getting ready to start. We couldn't even get mad at the kids.
Well, etiquette, in all walks of life is. Don Mahler is here. He is the Recon. We are the Recon. All right, you want to do politics? You want to yell at each other? Let's do it. What do you want to yell about today?
Again, just
I
another.
want to argue crab cakes.
No. I just think, Nestor, the first topic for me today, and they go together. There really are three topics, and I thought, man, they weave together, and we can't scream and shout at one another. I'm trying to make sense of it. And just recently, we wake up another morning, and a young African American male is shot after his car is stopped for an expired sticker on his license tag. And I'll address that in a minute. Shot by a police officer who claims that she thought she had a taser. Now that's interesting because, as everyone has testified, and I certainly have been aware of in my roles in government, is that police officers carry their gun, which is heavier, on their primary side. If they're right-handed, they carry it on their right. If they're left-handed, carry it, and their taser on the off side. And the feel of a gun and a taser don't feel at all alike. I mean, the gun is substantial, tasers fairly light. So you get shot by an officer who's claiming that she thought she had the taser for this expired sticker. Now, that expired sticker thing resonated with me because about a year ago, I'm in a gas station right up here in Catonsville, Shell station. And I'm pumping my gas, and a guy in a pickup truck is honking his horn. And he's pointing, and he's pointing, and he's pointing. And I'm going, what's wrong with this guy? And he goes, hey, pal, you're going to get a ticket. And I go, what are you talking about? He goes, your sticker's expired. And I looked down and I went, God darn, you're right. And
I knew me, by the way, too. It's happened.
I knew exactly where they were, Nestor. They were sitting on the table in my hallway. And I'd say, hey, I got to put that new sticker on. And I'd go out and forget to put the new sticker on. So I immediately went right home, hoping that I didn't get stopped. But here's what I know. And I will challenge all of our listeners who want to weigh in on this to prove me wrong. Had I been stopped for an expired license tag sticker. My car would not have been surrounded by police officers with guns. I'll give you another concrete example. This goes back, my goodness, this goes back 50 years. 50 years ago, I was a camp counselor at Mount St. Joe Day Camp. And the same thing happened. That time I was home from college, probably didn't pay attention because I was a dumb college guy, didn't pay attention to the fact that I needed to renew my license tags. And at St. Joe, you picked up students and took them to camp. You made a little extra money if you were willing to do that. So I had 4 kids. I had a red Volkswagen BW. I had 1 kid in the front and 3 in the back. And I'm taking them to St. Joe. I'm on Wilkins Avenue and the sirens. So police pull me over, they say, your license tag's expired. You can't drive his car. I'm going, this is great. So I have to call the camp director, say, man, I'm really sorry. My license tags are expired. I was in college. I guess I didn't pay any attention to it. Would you come get the kids? And then the officer comes back, and I think I'm 19 years old, Nestor. And the officer comes back, and he goes, you have to come with us. And I go, excuse me? He goes, you have an outstanding warrant for lack of child support. I said, lack of child support. I'm 19 years old. I'm not married. Sir, I'm sorry. There's a Don Moeller who has a lack of child support. You have to come with us. And sure enough, they put me in the car and they take me to the police station, and we get there and then we sort out, we confirm that whoever that Don Moeller is isn't this Don Moeller. I get someone to come pick me up, probably my mother, pick me up and take me home, get the license.
You got shaken down. Wow.
Oh, yeah, I got taken to the station. Yeah, they really did think there was a warrant for my arrest.
Well, you've had an experience I haven't had in my life that I hope to not have.
But here's the punchline to that, Nestor. At no time was I afraid that these police officers were going to hurt me. And you and I have talked. I was trying to think of so many guests.
Hurt you? How about kill you?
kill me. And you and I have talked to Wes Moore about it. We've talked to Barry Williams about it. We've talked to Brandon Scott about it. You can go.
It's more about what you coach your 12-year-old boy or girl to do, and the fact that they leave the house, and if they have an interaction with law enforcement or with the wrong people in society in some way, with accusations of he stole my cell phone, whatever the deal is, he's attacking me in the woods. I mean, we've seen all sorts of things here over the last couple of years that I remember calling Alan McCallum the one time I felt like I was profiled, and having a talk with him because I needed to vent. When I got shaken down by an African-American officer in DC one day because I wasn't, like, all the ticket brokers, and like I got shaken down in a way that I got profiled. And I was like, I don't like that. That doesn't feel good. And I remember telling Alan McCallum 20 years ago, it was at a Paul McCartney concert, an extra ticket. And I was just trying to sell it out in front. And I'm getting hassled while like real ticket brokers are sitting there laughing at me by like a cop. And I'm like, you're kidding me, right? Like, I'm just trying to sell my ticket, man. Like, I'm just trying to get my money back. But nonetheless, I remember how it made me feel. And I called Alan and I talked to Alan. Alan's like, Nestor, that happens to me every couple of weeks in some capacity, in some way, where someone looks at me because, you know, of the color of my skin, thinking I may be up to no good because I'm in a place where people that look like me usually aren't, or whatever those things would be. And
you've gotten to know Dr. Branch pretty well. He's joined us a number of times. Baltimore County's health Director of Health and Human Services, who's just getting really national recognition for the job that the county is doing. with its vaccination program. I remember a cabinet meeting, and I think maybe we talked about this with Dr. Branch at one time, under Kevin Kamenetz, and it was in the whole issue of driving while black came up in Baltimore County. And County Executive Kamenetz said, I know it's a tough subject, but I'm wondering if if some of you who are African American in the room can talk about whether or not you see it as a real issue in Baltimore County. And Dr. Branch was courageous enough to put up his hand and say, Mr. Exec, it's happened to me pulling out of my office on York Road. And he said, the only thing that was different between me and the other cars pulling out on York Road was that I was African American. That's disturbing. And I've looked at the videotape of the recent incident of that Army Lieutenant Caron Nazario in Virginia, a traffic stop. He's saying, "Hey, look, I'm afraid." And they're pointing weapons at him, and he's going, "I'm pepper sprayed. I'm afraid. I'm afraid." And the officer's response is, "You should be afraid." I mean, we have spent probably, Nestor, right, more, and we'll get to Derek Chauvin in a second. You and I have spent more time on this topic than any other. If we did some kind of bar graph, it's not even close.
Well, I
Right?
would say on the policing curve and
Right.
what the disruption has been to our way of life, especially in urban areas, and Black Lives Matter and what it means. And yeah, I would agree with that. That and Trumpism as a systemic issue. But yes.
Yeah, we've spent more time on this topic than any other, and that gets us to
Well, it
what's
was the
going.
root of Freddie Gray, right? Literally,
Sure.
right?
Oh no doubt about it. The Gun Trace Task Force, go down the list. And again, the sad thing when we talk about this, and I continue to believe this, is that well over 90, I don't know if the number is 95, I don't know if the number is 99, of the men and women who serve in our police departments across this nation are good and decent people who, as former Baltimore County Police Chief Jim Johnson always said, we've got to find people who are interested in service, not adventure. Service, not adventure. And they're there for that reason. But it doesn't change the fact that these are not isolated incidents. They just are not. And if we're going to fulfill the real promise and dreams of this nation, we have to figure this out. Nestor, I live in dread over the next week to 10 days because I really want to be wrong. I believe the Derek Chauvin trial will end in a hung jury, and it would be a good time. It would be a good time for everyone, if only it would work out like this, to go back and watch the 1957 movie 12 Angry Men with the great Lee J. Cobb. Sort of idealizes the jury room and that one holdout can turn things around. In this case, that the man was innocent, but it's the same theory, just flipped on its head. Because it's hard for me, Nestor, and I haven't watched all the testimony. It's been too gruesome for me, but I've watched
Well,
the
seeing the boy
recaps.
get shot in the Chicago alley with its hands in the air was a little gruesome for me on Thursday night too.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, really. So we've got to figure out, and it's not easy, and that's why God bless Mayor Scott and the others in our cities who are trying to address this issue. And it's not just in the cities, as we see in Minneapolis. We've got to come up with another model for policing. We just have to. And and I believe, and we're going to be tested. I think our cities, unfortunately, will likely be tested again because I think anyone that watches a police officer kneel on someone's neck for 9 minutes and say that that wasn't excessive force that led to George Floyd's death. I just don't know what they're looking at. As my wife said, The defense's argument appears to be based on two things. He was a big black guy, and you should be scared of big black guys. And number two, there were lots of black people standing around, and we should be scared when black people are standing around. And then number three, I guess it's based on three things that just coincidentally, because of prior drug use and some health issues, he just happened to die at the end of that 9 minutes. Now, if I'm on that jury, none of that makes sense to me. Now, I've said, full disclosure, I could not have been on that jury because Derek Chauvin would not have gotten a fair shake from me, and he deserves a fair shake. And he couldn't have gotten it from me because there's nothing they could have presented that would have made me not vote to convict Derek Chauvin. So I shouldn't have been on the jury either. But it's as one of the prosecutors said in the last day or two, a prosecutor's job is much, much more difficult. Think about it this way than the defense. The prosecutor has to go 12 for 12. The defense attorney has to go 1 for 12. 1 for 12. They need one juror who says, yeah, it was wrong, but I don't know. I don't know what I'd have done. I can't convict him. And I shudder to think what might happen if that takes place. But while we're doing that, I said there were several stories that came together. You and I chatted this week with our insiders, and they all pointed, I think, to police reform and the great work done by Speaker Adrian Jones and Senate President Bill Ferguson. I mean, Maryland is actually getting, it's so nice, isn't it? For the negative stuff that we get from time to time.
In a
We're actually
leadership
getting
position, yeah.
national recognition. I mean, the speaker and the president are getting national recognition for their effort in enacting true police reform legislation. So, I mean, there's a lot going on. We didn't even get to baseball and all the other good stuff. And
there's nothing good going on with the baseball team.
Well, yeah, there is. There is.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
I'm going to wrap with it.
We're getting to see where the bottom is. Is that what's good?
Oh, no. We're a terrible team. I agree with that. I do think that, as you know, and we'll see. The proof will be in the pudding. One of us will be right. One of us will be wrong. And if I'm wrong, I'll say, daggone it. I didn't want to be wrong, but because I want to be good again. I think we are on the right track. I think you can see nuggets, but we're really bad. I mean, right now, Nestor, I said to my grandson, think about it. I joked that Mark Turgeon had to coach a team all year long that did not have a point guard or a big man. Brandon Hyde is having to coach a team in Major League Baseball that doesn't have a shortstop or a second baseman. I just can't imagine trying to navigate a major league season without a shortstop.
This is what happens when you're trying to not win. So,
well, I think, listen, they're not rushing people. I get all that, and I support all that. But here's the positive thing, and I don't know if you agree on it, but you do pay attention to announcing. And this is no knock. I mean, I loved Gary Thorne. I think he's one of the greatest announcers ever. I like Scott Garceau. You know that I like Scott a lot. I love Palmer. But I was thinking the last couple of days as I watched Kevin Brown and Ben McDonald, I think this is an area where Elias and that whole team got it right, in that Jack Welch and other big-time CEOs always say you got to be thinking not a year or two ahead, but 10 and 20 years ahead.
Mike Elias had nothing to do with hiring the announcer.
Well, I think they're involved. I think they're more involved than you think. I think they are. I mean, I understand Mass, and I understand it's a separate entity.
Okay.
But let's give credit to John Angelo, whoever's running Masson, that I think, and it's the first time I've paid a lot of attention because he didn't get a lot of airtime last year. I think Kevin Brown is outstanding. And I watch MLB, so I listen to other broadcasters. I think he is potentially someone that when we look 20 or 30 years from now, we're going to go, this guy's the real deal. He seems to have an enthusiasm for baseball. He seems to know the game. He seems to respect its history, seems to have a sense of humor. And I don't know about you. You probably know Ben. I don't know Ben. I'm blown away by how good McDonald is at breaking down games.
Uh,
I don't know if you would have anticipated that.
I agree with the Ben McDonald part. I don't agree with the Kevin Brown. Is that his
Kevin
name?
Brown, yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like his
I have
voice.
not been impressed with the
Yeah.
cheerleading. It's weird to me. But
See,
I
I
think
like that.
Ben's better at it than anybody else has been since Palmer, and that's or well
Oh,
Lowenstein.
yeah. I mean, that's a high bar,
That's a
right? I
high
mean,
bar. Yeah, yeah. I thought about that last week when I was watching him because there was a week of Palmer freezing early on, and then the home games came, and then there's Ben, then there's a whole different thing, um, and it sounds completely different, from Garceau and Palmer. That it just stopped, and then like a new thing started when the series started over the weekend, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna listen to this, check it out, and Ben's really, really good. I mean,
he's
and,
really
and I
good, and
do know Ben, and I do like Ben a lot. Ben's one of my all time favorites.
well, he seemed, he really his insights are great. What I like about him, and I'll go back and then we'll wrap it up because we've gone way too long. But what I like about Ben is he has that Palmer trait in that he's not afraid to say what it is. Almost like he said, "Look, I'll go back to the bayou if you don't like what I'm saying. I'll go back and eat some
Well, there is
crawfish."
part of all of that inside of baseball, the tough love part of Earl Weaver, just insulting Jim Palmer when he's out on the mound with the ball, and Palmer laughs about that now. As that was my motivational. That was my coach was just a prick who was just mean to me. You know what I mean? Like there is a little bit of that they were all in baseball brought up with. That there's a coddling part of what goes on now that's a little different than even what Jim Palmer likes when a guy's only got 60 pitches in him or whatever that
Oh
is.
yeah,
So
yeah. No, I mean those guys. There. I mean, I love it. I love the way Palmer and Ben do it. And I would tell you, you're going to get opportunities. My prediction is that Kevin Brown's going to grow. Again, I'm a Scott Garceau fan, but I'm trying to think. Scott's not going to be doing this 15, 20 years from now. Scott and I are contemporaries, so he's not going to be doing it. And I think compared to a lot of young announcers that I've heard across the country, I think they made a great hire in Kevin Brown. As I said, I love his voice. And I like that he appears to be having a good time. It's supposed to be fun, right? It's
well,
supposed
there's
to be
nobody
fun.
there.
And
You
it'll
better
be
make
more
your own
fun when
party
we
right
win.
now. I mean, I'm
Well,
watching it. They
hey,
stink,
you know what?
stank, stunk. No one's watching. No one's going. If you're
Well,
broadcasting, you better be
people are
having fun. I mean, unless
people
you're
are
euchre drinking out of a bottle between innings.
well, you know what's weird about that, Nestor, and then we will get out of here. And next week we'll do 7 inning games because can't do it in just a minute or two because you and I have real different take on that. And I really want to talk about it because I know I'm in the minority.
They could do
Uh,
nothing wrong for you. It's
no, 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 no.
amazing.
This has
I
nothing to
said
do with the
this
order.
week on the air, it's like when I talk baseball with you, it's like talking to you. It's like
This
when
has
I was
nothing.
12 years old and you met me.
This
It's
has
like,
nothing to do
Daddy,
with the order.
Daddy, tell me everything's perfect with baseball.
No,
It's
no. Oh
awful and
no.
no one's going right now.
Oh no, no, no. I'll
That's
be
the
glad to
truth.
tell you lots of things that are wrong with baseball. We'll do that next week. I'll make that number one.
Seven
To
inning
just
games.
I'm
You're
going
gonna
to just
start if you're gonna die on the 7 inning games are okay, Hill.
I said
I don't even want to take that phone call to be
I
honest with
didn't
you.
want to do that now. But you know what is weird, Nestor, is this strange year where nobody can go to games pretty much across the country. The playing field in terms of fan support has been leveled. In other words, you watch these games, nobody's at any of these games. Nobody's at our game. So it's all, we've got 5 or 6,000 people out there, maybe on a Yankee game, maybe 10 or 11. And that's what everybody else has. So in a weird way, that's been leveled. Are we bad? We're very bad. Do we have a couple of nice young pitchers? I think so. We'll see how it plays out. Do we have someone who I think is going to be a legitimate major league hitter in Ryan Mountcastle? Yes. If he's not, every scout has lost their mind. Is Trey Mancini not only a great story, but I think a really good baseball player? That's it. True. Santander, I think the scopes out. Do I think Cedric Mullins is going to hit 400? No. Do I think Cedric Mullins is going to hit 300? No. But if Cedric Mullins can hit 260 with an on-base percentage of 320 or 325, I think he can play center field for a long time. So we'll talk
For a
baseball
team that
next week.
loses 100 games, yeah.
Yeah, but not for much longer. I don't think. We shall see. We'll do baseball
It's
next week.
not hard to play. You're playing the hard side, which is everything's good. I'm playing the I
No, I
watch this
told you I
crap every
started. But
night,
wait a
and
minute, wait a minute. I told you that we're terrible and probably going to lose 100 games. I don't.
I'm just trying
How's
to figure
that?
out what's
How's that
worthwhile
everything?
about this in
How's
June or
that everything
July.
good? We're going
You
to
know
lose
what I'm going
100
to be
games.
doing? Fly fishing with Dan Rodricks, or being Owen,
I
or
want you to do that too.
crabbing. I'm going to do all of that.
And I'm gonna do that and watch the Orioles. All right, man. Another good edition of the Recon. Everybody, hold your breath. Um, stay safe.
I'm getting my
Uh,
vaccine.
love your neighbor. Let's look out for what happens in Derek Chauvin. We're going to really need to reach down for our better angels, because I think we're in for a rough couple of weeks. But next week we come back. We'll do baseball. We'll do gubernatorial politics. Actually, our friend Barry Glassman just announced that he's going to run for controller.
Did he?
I spoke to Barry yesterday. We're going to get him on and talk about that decision. So we got a lot going on.
Running for controller. Who knew?
Yep.
All right. Don Moeller here. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570. Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking. Baltimore positive.